nothing collapsed. There was no moment when the world broke in half. No sirens, no announcement, no single event you can point to and say, that's when it ended. And yet, something ended. You can feel it in small, ordinary moments, when achievement doesn't land the way it used to, when conversations feel rehearsed, when even good news feels strangely weightless. Life still works, systems still function, people still go to work, make plans, talk about the future, but something underneath it all feels thinner, less solid, less convincing. This is not a video about collapse, it's about something quieter, because the most unsettling endings don't arrive with chaos. They arrive with indifference, with disengagement, with the slow realization that what once oriented your life no longer does. The old world didn't fall apart. It quietly stopped making sense. For many people, the discomfort doesn't show up as panic or despair. It shows up as drift. You still participate, but without conviction. You still perform, but without belief. You still plan, but without trust. The world looks the same, but it doesn't register the same way. News cycles blur together. Success feels oddly abstract. Advice sounds recycled. You're not overwhelmed, you're under-anchored. And the strangest part is how hard this feeling is to explain. If you call it burnout, it doesn't quite fit. If you call it depression, something feels off. If you call it anxiety, it doesn't capture the flatness. What you're experiencing isn't emotional collapse. It's context collapse. The story you were living inside no longer holds your attention, but nothing has replaced it yet. At some point, the familiar instructions stop working. Just work harder. Focus on the long term. Everything pays off eventually. These ideas used to feel solid. They gave direction. They made sacrifice feel meaningful. Now they sound distant, almost theoretical. It's not that you disagree with them, it's that they no longer orient you. You don't feel lazy, you don't feel rebellious, you feel like you're continuing a game whose rules no longer match reality, and quietly, without drama, motivation drains away. Not because you've given up, but because the system you were optimizing for no longer feels real. When we talk about the old world, we're not talking about a decade, a country, or a political order. We're talking about a psychological structure. The old world was built on a few assumptions. That effort reliably leads somewhere. That the future is stable enough to plan around. That progress is linear. That institutions are permanent. That identity is anchored in roles and milestones. Most importantly, the old world made a promise. Sacrifice now. Life will arrive later. Work now. Endure now. Delay presence now. Meaning was always just over the horizon. And for a long time, that promise worked. The old world gave coherence. Even when life was hard, it made sense why you were doing it. You could place yourself on a timeline. You could see your effort accumulating. The future felt trustworthy. You could imagine yourself arriving somewhere. Stable, secure, complete. That belief allowed people to trade presence for progress, connection for ambition, now for later. And because the future felt solid, the trade felt fair. At some point, the promise stopped delivering. People followed the instructions and still felt unfulfilled. They hit milestones and felt strangely empty. They did everything right and felt behind anyway. The future began to feel unstable, not dangerous, just unreliable. The horizon kept moving. The issue wasn't that people failed, it was that the system no longer produced the meaning it promised, and belief began to erode. Not loudly, not rebelliously, quietly. Most systems don't end with revolution, they end when people stop believing in them enough to sacrifice for them. Participation becomes mechanical. Ambition becomes performative. Language stays the same. But conviction disappears. The old world isn't being destroyed, it's being outgrown. And that's why this ending feels so strange. There's no villain, no dramatic collapse, no clear alternative. Just a growing sense that you're investing energy into something that no longer returns meaning. One of the clearest signs of this shift is how time feels. The past feels unreachable, like a sealed chapter. The future feels abstract, like a concept instead of a destination. And the present feels oddly thin. People either live in nostalgia, grieving a version of life that can't return, or in anxiety, trying to control a future that hasn't arrived. Both create the same result: disconnection from now. And when presence disappears, fulfillment follows it. There's a grief many people are carrying quietly. Not grief for a person, not grief for an event. Grief for a promised life that never quite arrived. Grief for the version of adulthood you were preparing for. Grief for the sense of direction you were told would come. There's no ritual for this grief, no language for it. So it turns inward. And because it's abstract, people often assume it isn't legitimate. But it is. You're not grieving loss. You're grieving misalignment. Depression collapses inward. What many people are feeling now is different. It's awareness encountering a world whose narrative no longer fits. When meaning dissolves, consciousness feels heavy. Not because something is wrong with you, but because the environment no longer provides orientation. You are not broken. You are noticing something fundamental. The next phase doesn't arrive with clarity or certainty, it arrives quietly. Meaning doesn't return through bigger goals or faster progress. It returns through attention, through embodiment, through depth, smaller lives, slower rhythms, more honest presence. Not because the world shrinks, but because experience becomes real again. This isn't about rejecting society or escaping responsibility. It's about withdrawing your sense of worth from systems that no longer provide it. About stopping the endless postponement of life. The past is gone. The future isn't here. And if you live in either for too long, you miss the only place meaning can exist. Here. Now. Not optimized, not improved, not complete, just lived. The old world isn't ending tomorrow. It's already ending in how you relate to it, and the quietness of that ending isn't a failure. It's a signal that something truer is asking for your attention. Not later. Not once everything makes sense. But now. In the only moment that was ever real.